Fisher Body is perhaps one of the most well-known names in the early automotive industry, but of the 7 Fisher brothers, one of them kept a lower profile while building some of the most lavish mansions to come from that fortune. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. In 1886, William A. Fisher was born in Norwalk, Ohio. He was the third of 11 children and the third of the 7 sons who would later be known as the Fisher brothers. In 1880, his father Lawrence and his brother Andrew, together with a brother-in-law, founded the Fisher Brothers Carriage Company in Norwalk, building horse-drawn vehicles in a frame shop. The 2 oldest, Fred and Charles, peeled off first. They headed to Detroit in the early 1900s, drawn by an uncle already in the wagon business there, and quickly fell in with the new gasoline-powered contraptions that everyone in the city seemed to be tinkering with. In 1905, Fred built the body for a closed-cab Cadillac at the personal request of Cadillac's founder, Henry Leland. It was one of the first fully enclosed American automobiles, and it cracked something open. On July 22, 1908, 3 months before William Durant founded General Motors a few miles away, Fred and Charles incorporated the Fisher Body Company in Detroit with $50,000 in seed money. William, meanwhile, took his time. He stayed in Norwalk learning the family craft, came into Detroit briefly, and finally joined Fisher Body in 1915, the last brother to do so. By then, the company was already the largest auto body manufacturer on Earth, cranking out roughly 370,000 bodies a year for Ford, Cadillac, Buick, Studebaker, Packard, Hudson, Chevrolet, and a dozen others. William slid into a senior executive role and got to work. Then, in 1919, General Motors offered the Fishers the kind of deal they still teach in business schools, $27.6 million for 60% of the company, with the brothers staying in operational control and taking seats on the GM board. They accepted. Then, in 1926, GM swallowed the rest. By the end of that transaction, the 7 brothers had collectively cleared somewhere between $136 million and $208 million. William, by this point, had become president of the Fisher Body division and a director of General Motors. He worked from a 27th floor suite in Albert Kahn's gleaming new Fisher building, attended a daily 12:45 p.m. lunch with his brothers in their walnut-paneled dining room, and oversaw an empire that, at its peak, employed more than 100,000 people across 40-plus plants. Fisher Body used more wood, carpet, tacks, and threads than any other manufacturer on Earth. But let's back up a bit. William married Laura Titus, a fellow Norwalk native, and the couple had only 1 child, but several mansions. In 1916, the year after he formally joined Fisher Body, William and Laura built their first house at 111 Edison Avenue, on the near north side of Detroit. This was their entry into the city's automotive aristocracy. But this was just a home. What came next was a palace. By 1925, the GM buyout was largely complete, and Detroit's old money was migrating north of 6 Mile Road into a wooded subdivision called Palmer Woods. And on a corner lot at 1791 Willisley Drive, William commissioned a house that, when finished, was reported in the Detroit newspapers to be the largest and most expensive private residence in the city. The William Fisher Mansion was an English Renaissance fantasy executed in red brick laid in English bond, with limestone coins, mullion bay windows, Tudor arch limestone door surrounds, marble carvings around many of the windows, and a slate roof that climbed and dropped through gable after gable. Inside, no expense was spared, and very few ideas were rejected. William used many of the same European craftsmen who were, at the very moment, finishing the lobby of the Fisher Building 3 miles to the south. The same plasterers, marble cutters, ironworkers, and stained glass artists Albert Kahn had imported to assist the Hungarian sculptor Gizem Marodi. The result in a private home was overwhelming. The family nicknamed the place the Clipper House because William, a sailor at heart, had given the interiors a discreet sailing motif. By the late 1930s, like the Edsel Fords and the Carl Fishers, no relation, and most other Detroit industrialists with a sense of self-preservation, the Fishers wanted somewhere warm to spend the month of February. In 1937, William and Laura commissioned the prominent Miami Beach architect Carlos Schöppel, Beaux-Arts trained in Paris and London, to design a Mediterranean-style winter residence on Sunset Island, on a parcel that faced Biscayne Bay. The construction was announced in the Miami Herald that September as one of the major residential projects in the country. The house was approached through decorative pylons onto a circular drive, with a guest house on one side of the gate and a service wing, 3-car garage, maid quarters on the other. The principal rooms on the ground floor faced the bay and opened onto a long terrace. 3 of the second-floor bedrooms shared a balcony beneath a sweeping, red-tile roof. It was sun-dappled, breezy, and pink-washed, everything the Willisley place was not. It quickly became a kind of architectural icon for Miami Beach. Tour boats featured it on their bay cruises. Postcard publishers used the bayfront facade as a representative image of American architecture in the resort city. But this was all very far away from home for William. For weekend escapes nearer Detroit, the Fishers gravitated to Grosse Ile, the cluster of islands at the mouth of the Detroit River where Henry Ford, Ransom Olds, and a great many other auto pioneers had built summer homes. William and brother Charles each built large summer houses on the north end of Park Lane on the main island. William's was rather simple by comparison to his other mansions, but no less stately. Facing the water, a 2-story portico with 4 columns marked the entrance from the boat dock. On the other side, visitors arriving by car would swing through the porte-cochere and be greeted by the doorman. Stepping inside, the sheer scale of the house becomes immediately apparent as a grand staircase sweeps up the central hall. Each room was designed with the same blown-out proportions, allowing space for hundreds of guests to mingle comfortably. Now heading back outside, the house wasn't the only massive building on the property, there was also the pool building. This heated room could be ventilated in the summer or enjoyed throughout the winter, one of the very few swimming pools of its time in the area. William Fisher passed away in 1969 at the age of 83, and the 4 houses had 4 very different fates. The Boston Edison house at 111 Edison is the redemption. It is still there, still a private residence, still contributing to the historic district that protects it. The Willisley Drive place was the heartbreak. After William's departure, the family sold the property. On a freezing night in early January 1994, with propane heaters running through the night to keep the mansion warm, it caught fire. The roof collapsed, the upper floors and most of the interior were a complete loss. Preservationists fought for a year to find a way to salvage what was left, but unfortunately, they lost. In January 1995, what remained of the Clipper House was bulldozed. The Sunset Island house in Miami Beach is the cliffhanger. It survived intact for more than 80 years. In September 2020, it sold to a new owner, who within months filed plans for a total demolition in replacement with a new house by a different architect. The Miami Design Preservation League opened a campaign to save it, but as of now, the house still hangs in the balance. The Grosse Ile summer estate is a partial survival, with the house gone but the pool house reportedly surviving with alterations. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Which of these houses was your favorite? Let me know down below in the comments section. I'd also like to say a very special thank you to our channel members for making this video possible. If you would like to contribute to the research and production of these videos, join the membership program today. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time on This House.